Hello and welcome to another WebbPaton webinar. I'm Libby Barron and today I'm joined by my colleague Helen Wiltshire, who will be talking about achieving planning when converting farm buildings and specifically focusing on how to identify farm buildings which might be suitable for conversion. With BPS disappearing, now may be the time to look at diversification opportunities if you haven't done so already. So without further ado, let's get started. My first question to you, Helen, is about converting farm buildings to residential use. Is this something which can be considered on redundant farm buildings?
Thanks for that, Libby. Many farmers will find themselves with one or multiple surplus buildings. This may be due to the replacement by newer, more practical agricultural buildings, changes in your farming practice, or even due to retirement. It may be worth looking to make use of a surplus building or buildings and create an additional source of income for your business. This is especially important, as Libby mentioned earlier, with the reduction and eventual removal of BPS after 2027. You may have noticed more barn conversions taking place in recent years. It is likely some of these conversions are as a result of the permitted development rights which were introduced in 2014. Class Q of the permitted development rights allows for the change of use of agricultural buildings to residential, subject to certain criteria. Up to 5 dwellings can be converted, subject again to floor area restrictions. Each existing buildings cannot be extended though, so you will have to work within the existing footprint that you have. This type of application allows for building operations reasonably necessary for converting the building, but it doesn't allow for a complete rebuild.
And how does someone know if their building is suitable?
So there are various criteria that need to be met. Probably the most important is the building must be structurally sound and capable of carrying the load-bearing elements of the dwelling. It must have been in an agricultural use in 2013 as part of an established agricultural unit, or if the building is redundant and not in use when it was last in use, it must have been agricultural. No previous permitted development can be carried out on the holding since 2013. The building cannot be listed and it cannot be located in an area of outstanding natural beauty or national park, etc. Unfortunately for many of our clients, Wiltshire Council do not tend to look favourably on more modern, steel-framed, larger scale barns, preferring smaller buildings such as those on the screen. This could be the more modern concrete block buildings or a more traditional red brick or stone built building. However, we have seen some local councils who will permit a conversion of these larger scale steel framed buildings. This includes South Gloucestershire and the Vale of White Horse. In these cases, councils will look more favourably on a building where it has more enclosed walls. For example, if you had an entirely open-sided hay barn or straw barn, this would not really be suitable for Class Q.
And if someone has already used their permitted development rights to put up an agricultural barn, does this mean they cannot convert a barn to residential use?
So as I just stated, if you don't meet that criteria, unfortunately, you will not be able to apply under Class Q. So this includes if you've recently put up an agricultural building under permitted development. However, there is still the chance of applying under a full planning application, as permitted development doesn't affect this. The full planning route is, however, more suited to traditional barns, again, as per those on the screen, as the full planning policy focuses on the reuse of redundant rural buildings. Under full planning, councils must consider more impacts of the development when deciding the application, so unfortunately giving more chances for refusal.
And how, Helen, can you tell me what costs are involved?
So in terms of planning fees, the Class Q planning fee is £206, with the full planning being £462. You are also likely to need a structural and ecological surveys, and you may need further surveys dependent on the site. We can provide you estimates of these costs if required after an initial appraisal of your building.
And is there anything else which needs to be considered?
So as I've just mentioned, cost, obviously the planning cost, but also the cost of conversion. This may be significant, especially if you've got a more traditional, say, stone-built barn. Vehicle access and visibility onto the highway is an important aspect that councils will consider. Is your barn in a desirable location? For example, if it's right next to your slurry store, it might not make the most attractive house. Would you be looking to keep the dwelling in your ownership or sell it on with planning? If planning was converted, you obviously have this option: sell it to a developer for them to develop, or keep the barn and do up yourself. Again, you also have a decision to make about what you do with the barn long term. If you do keep it in your ownership, is it going to be for a family member to live in, renting it out, or using it as a holiday let, for example? Tax implications are very important and something that you need to discuss with your accountant. Class Q conversions also must be habitable within 3 years. This is very different from a standard planning permission, which only has to be implemented. So something to consider, as a Class Q will need to be majority finished within the 3-year time frame.
And what about if a building isn't suitable to convert to residential? Is there a straightforward way of achieving another use, such as a commercial unit?
There is. So if we use the buildings on this slide as an example, if you've got more modern steel frame barns, which, as discussed earlier, are not likely to be suitable for a residential change of use, you could look at getting a commercial use. This is under Class R of the permitted development rights, and it allows for the change of use of agricultural buildings or part of an agricultural building to a flexible commercial use. This is up to a maximum of 500 square metres, about 5,300 square foot. Buildings do not need to be redundant for a Class R application. One thing to be aware of is Class R does only allow for the change of use. So if any external works are needed, for example, if you were converting to an office, you would need to do a full planning application once you'd received the Class R change of use.
And what uses count as a flexible use?
So a flexible commercial use really can include anything from storage, business to shops. Some examples on the slide, and which may suit a farm, would be an office, a workshop, a farm shop, or even a cafe.
And how would I go about applying for a Class R change of use?
Yes, so for smaller buildings or part buildings below 150 square metres, only a simple plan and statement is required to be submitted. For buildings greater than 150 square metres, a prior approval application must be made, which does involve more documents. However, this is far simpler than a full planning application, and the councils only are able to consider 4 impacts: flood risk, transport, noise and contamination. And
Helen, how much does an application cost?
Good news, a Class R application fee is only £96 plus a £28 service fee, and there aren't usually any other surveys required.
And what sort of income would you expect for renting out commercial space?
So, good question. I've listed some example rents out on the slide. We would be expecting anywhere from sort of 50p to £1 at the lower end for uncovered yard storage, £2 to £3 a square foot where you've got a sort of basic open-sided storage. Raising where it's enclosed but still in a sort of basic condition, perhaps £5 to £6 per square foot. We'd be looking more £8 a square foot area for higher quality insulated buildings, perhaps with concrete floors and more secure roller shutter doors, that sort of thing, and reaching anywhere up to £12 plus for office space.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that run through on planning, Helen. Hopefully for you watching at home, it's got you thinking about redundant farm buildings, which may be on your farms. If you've got any planning questions, including those that we've run through today, please just pick up the phone to any of the WebbPaton team and we'd be more than happy to help. Look out for the next WebbPaton webinar, which will be coming up shortly. But in the meantime, thank you for watching.